All right, greetings and salutations. How's everybody doing this morning? Let's start with this. Want to talk about final expense and why I think final expense really is the best product to sell. There's a lot of different products to sell. Probably some of you have looked into Medicare, ACA, mortgage protection, IULs. There's a lot of talk about those products. And final expense, in my opinion, I think is one of the best products overall to sell because so much of it, it's not a perfect product. Like there's problems with any business, there's problems with any product you sell. But I think it has the right mix of the good stuff to be a great product for the vast majority of people out there, no matter how it is that you want to sell. So I've got a couple of notes here that I want to go through to talk about this. Number one, and let me tell you the first number one reason to sell final expense: zero sex appeal. Now, what do you mean, David? Well, if you go to a party or tell your friends you're selling burial insurance, what do you think their reaction is going to be? Not this. Ooh la la. Not going to be that. I had a neighbor once when I first started, I think it was in like 2012. She was older, and she said, "What do you do for a living?" And I said, I sell burial insurance. And she was, "Ooh." It's like, "Nah, I don't think so." So why is that a good thing? Well, I think it's a good thing because I try to think, and I think you guys should think with an inverted way of thinking. Final expense isn't necessarily the most popular product to sell. You're selling to older people, you're selling to people of lower means, right? It's not some big time bank on yourself policy that's some multi-million dollar, like it, there's not a lot of like, stuff to it. It's a simple product, but it's not going to necessarily attract the masses. And I think when you look for a product, having a product that isn't necessarily the first one you reach for is a good thing and may indicate, and I believe in this case, a market that's going to be easier to get into, simpler to get into, and provide more opportunities than what the current thing is that everybody's excited about. Does that make sense, everybody? So I think that's a good thing. And a lot of the times that I find too, and you guys are lucky here if you're thinking about final expense or already selling it, people don't get into the business to sell final expense. I don't know about you, but I stumbled across final expense in my process of doing due diligence. I didn't even know burial insurance was a thing, right? I was doing research. I came across the insurance forums. I saw a guy named John Duggar talking about selling final expense. I was like, this sounds kind of cool, you know? And so that fact that it's not well known and that it's not out there and heavily promoted means I think a good business model for the long term. Another thing that's really good about selling final expense, it is a one call close. All right. This means whether you're selling in person or over the phone, you should be selling the policy on the first presentation. Okay? It's not a policy or a product that takes multiple sales calls. Now, why is that important? You make more money faster, right? Not necessarily more money, but you make your money faster, right? And the thing for most agents and I've only recruited for 10 plus years, is the speed at which they get paid is really important. Most people need to get paid quickly in this business. If you compare this to something like Medicare or ACA, which are good in their own accords, the problem with those businesses, they're slower paid business models. Okay, does that make sense? So a final expense with a one-call close, getting into this business, you're going to sell that person on the first call, or you never will. And that's a mindset you have to develop and then keep, because some people will challenge you and say, "Hey, I want to buy from you, Gisette. I got to talk to my mom, or I got to talk to my daughter," or whatever their excuse is, right? And you got to learn to overcome that. So all in all, the point I think this is good is because with a one-call close business model, it's easier to scale. You can work more leads. You don't have these long protracted sales cycles with annuities or other products, which may slow your process down and you getting paid. And again, getting paid quickly for most of us, I know it was for me when I started, is extremely important. Number three, I like selling final expense, and I think it's great, is that it's not technical. It's not a technical sale. I mean, Chris, you've been doing this long enough. I mean, basically, selling final expense is this. "Hey, Mildred, are you going to die?" "Yeah." "Are you worried about leaving that to a loved one?" Hopefully they say yeah. If they say no, that's a whole nother problem. And then you got to figure out if it's affordable, and then it can fit their budget, and then you sell them on why they should do it today. So the point is, this isn't an elaborate product like, say, Medicare. If you sell the person the wrong plan, you may screw them up bad. They lose their insulin, their costs go up, they're in a world of hurt, right? There's a lot to know when it comes to Medicare, somewhat with ACA or annuities. And so there's a longer learning curve with products out there like those. But with final expense, it's simple. We know everybody's going to die. Ain't anybody get out of this world alive. And we know there's going to be what? A cost to dying. And it's just a matter of figuring out and having us learn how to sell these people so that they will buy it today from us. Does that make sense? So the fact that it's not technical, I think, just makes final expense easier. I'll say easier, simpler to get into for the newer agent, the agent that doesn't want to go through a long learning curve to just make some money. Number 4 on the list here, this is kind of what I've already mentioned, fast cash. So the nice thing about final expense being a one-call close business is that most of these carriers pay on issue. Now, what that means if you're new to the business, on issue means after, usually several days after the policy is approved and then mailed off, okay? So conceivably, with most carriers, you're going to get paid just a couple of days after the policy is issued. If you're buying your own leads, you have to put up the money up front in order before you make sales. So the faster you get your cash on your sale, the more you can pay that down in profit, right? Worst case scenario, you're in a situation where you're getting paid on first draft, which may be a couple of weeks after that policy was approved. Does that make sense? So all in all, from a couple of days to a couple of weeks is generally the norm when selling final expense. Again, compare that to Medicare, and this is why I don't push Medicare as much as I used to. It's a realization that I have. Some of you have watched my content long enough, have seen me talk about Medicare. I've kind of backed off of it for several reasons. But one of the things I discovered is we'd bring in people to do Medicare, but if they were going to replace an existing Medicare Advantage plan, they're prorated $300 and change, depending on when that policy begins. What does that mean? If it starts in July, you're only getting paid $150 up front. But then what about the marketing costs? What about the other costs to your business? For most of us, 90%, in that kind of model, you're just not going to keep money. You're going to lose money for a while. Long term, you keep doing it. You can keep the policies on the books. It's going to be nice. But in the beginning, we got to worry about our bills today, like our mortgage payment today, not 6, 12 months from now, right? So point being, with final expense, it's fast pay. And that means you get paid faster. That means you cover your expenses faster. That means it's easier to get your family to support you in this business because they see the money coming in faster, which are all good things to keep you in the business. Also, of course, what's nice about final expense now, and this really came, I think, in part with COVID, in part with all the lockdowns and the changes of doing business, is that this business is both telesales and face-to-face friendly. If you want to do telesales, there are carriers now that have verbal applications, electronic applications. You get instant approvals. You hang up the phone. You don't ever have to leave your home. You can literally do it from the comfort of your home. It wasn't quite like this maybe 5 years ago. Some carriers were doing it. There are companies like Forrester's right before COVID started that emailed everybody and said, we're out of the telesales business. We don't want anything to do with it, which is like really bad timing because the shift to the business model has been remote. It's been telesales. So if you want to sell face-to-face, though, you may be wondering, is it still an opportunity? I'd say it absolutely is. If anything, there's less competition face-to-face, too, in the final expense arena. You go back 7, 8 years ago when I was in the field, everybody sold final expense in person. The only people doing telesales were in a call center. Okay, so the advantage of face-to-face agent, if that's your inclination, it's you see people eye to eye, you get to review their policies. You may find stuff that can help the client better than if you're selling over the phone. Point is, no matter how you want to sell, remotely, in person, final expenses, it's the bomb. It's great. Continuing, now this is a really important factor here. I'm going to get in a couple of related issues from, I would say, a macro perspective. Let me put it that way. So one of the things I like about final expense is the trend that we see from a population standpoint. So a couple of factoids I've found interesting. So we've all heard by now, if you've been doing this long enough, 10 to 11,000 baby boomers are retiring daily, turning 65. That turning 65 mode change. The reason that's important is people generally retire. A lot of people are still working, but mindset shifts, right? They start thinking about not accumulating money, but keeping what they've earned, or protecting their assets, or protecting their family if they die, right? So with more and more people turning 65, this increases the population pool of people who are over 65. And what you'll see is this 10 to 11,000 retirees a day will go on for probably the next 10, 15, 20 years. Okay. And then the population base of baby boomers, if my math is right, I think it's about 50 million right now. And then by 2040, it's going to be 75 million. There's going to be a 50% increase in the population of seniors. Why do we care? Because burial insurance is sold to old people, all right? So the more of them we have, the more prospects we have. And the other thing I think a lot of baby boomers are realizing is they're getting to retirement and they're not having as much money as they thought they would. They put their money in the stock market. They didn't save like they should have. They're ending their careers with less money. And with final expense, generally speaking, you're selling to people who don't have a significant amount of savings. There's exceptions to that, of course. But again, this pool of prospects is growing over time. Okay. Also, I like the fact that our seniors, our prospects, have guaranteed money. Now, they may not have a lot of guaranteed money, but they have something, and that's called Social Security, right? So one of the things that originally attracted me personally to Final Expense is that my clients, for a fact, were always going to have a check every single month, no matter what. Now, what they did with the money, it varies, right? But the fact is they got money every single month. I had just gone through the Great Recession. Some of you probably did too. Maybe you lost money in your stocks or had a business. My business went down the tank, right? And so I saw what happened with my prospects, which were kind of like middle class, upper middle class, when they stopped spending money. And I thought I had a great operation, but with economic tailwinds coming in, it caused an impact that was harder for me to control. And I learned a really important lesson with Final Expense. I didn't have to worry about that. Now, you could say, well, Social Security's broke. What about politicians? Well, 50 to 75 million baby boomers are a large voting bloc. And I guarantee you, functionally speaking, if the government goes after their money, they're not voting for the Democrat or Republican that voted for that. Does that make sense, everybody? So it's the third rail for a reason. I think it would take some sort of devastating, country calamity before Social Security goes away. All of this is to say, with selling Final Expense, it's not the biggest policies. It's not an IUL. It's not going to be a huge premium most of the time. But you're dealing with people that foreseeably are always going to have money every month. And that means for you the possibility to have business stick. Because that's the thing with our business, right? What happens when you sell something and it lapses? You have a chargeback, right? So the fact that somebody we know is getting money predictably same day every single month, these are all good for our purposes of selling a policy and getting them to stick. Continuing, this is one of those things. I'm like everybody else. I learn as I grow through this business. I change my mind, right? One of the things I've grown to appreciate with Final Expense is there's no government, hopefully, intrusion. So what do I mean by that? Anybody sell health insurance before 2010? What did Sibelius do to you?
Well, I was selling underwritten major medical, like Golden Rule and stuff before Obamacare.
Yeah.
I was selling underwritten major medical through
Yeah.
private carriers before Obamacare, and then also indemnity plans, mini meds as well.
Did you lose your business?
Because of Obamacare? Indemnities are still around, but they're not as big as
About health insurance.
Oh, it's a lot different now,
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. There are agents that had six-figure renewals
Yeah.
that before Obamacare started, they were set, they were retired, they built their business, and it went away.
Our commission rate with Golden Rule used to be 18% on an underwritten, and then that dropped down to like $20 a month at one point.
Yeah. Why? Because health insurance is a government the government has a vested interest in health insurance, and there's no way around that, right? That's just the way it is, okay? Whether you support it or not. That's the nature of how our society approaches health insurance. They demanded what we've got now. But the point is, from a business standpoint, if you think about the business, if you run a business that's dependent on the government and they're yay or nay, you could be at the mercy if a new administration comes in or the tides shift in a different direction. We are kind of seeing that to some extent with Medicare. There's a lot of talk about Medicare Advantage. The CMS right now is, at least for the FMOs, looking at cutting commissions on overrides, which I think are going to impact the agent. So the point is, with final expense, not yet. Let's not give them any ideas, right? So final expense is not something that the government feels should be regulated or cost controlled or anything like that. And that is a good thing in an environment where some of our products we could sell could be here today and gone tomorrow, right? Final expense is a great gateway drug. So what I mean by gateway drug, what can you sell? What can you sell final expense to? What products can you sell to a final expense prospect?
Subs and Advantage,
Advantage, subs,
401ks, and roll up into
annuities. Yeah. Final expense offers the springboard to different products. Now, I don't advocate agents, especially newer ones, do anything other than final expense. I wouldn't even consider it for at least 6 months, probably closer to 12 months. But the point is, if you're inclined to want to do other products at a later point, you can go back to these final expense products, prospects, clients, really. You can cross-sell them Medicare. That's probably the easiest thing to sell to them. 80% or more have Medicare, even the people under 65 that are disabled. Not a lot of them, but some of them will have some money tucked away somewhere in an IRA, 401k, something like that, right? And there may be even some eligible for ACA health insurance plans, right? So the point is that longer term, final expense allows you to broaden into other products if your inclination is to sell something other than final expense. Now, for me personally, I've used to push a lot of cross-selling. I've backed off on it a lot. I think there is some wisdom in only selling one thing and getting really good at it and putting all your time, effort, and energy and scaling that up. I've professionally done that in my business. We can talk about that later, where we used to do Medicare and ACA at the equal rate of final expense, at least talked about it, but that ended up being more of a distraction for our company, and we've refocused back into final expense. And we've more than doubled our production several months, month to month, well, last year month compared to like March 23 to March 24, by just refocusing back on the fundamentals. And I think on a smaller scale individually, that's an important lesson for you guys too. There's good money to be made in final expense if you focus into it, dial into it, scale it up, right? Any questions so far? Right here, hold on one second, Cass. Thanks, Chris.
Of course, then how about cancer insurance?
How about cancer insurance?
Yes.
You could sell cancer. I've heard of some agents selling cancer insurance. It's not a very popular product. I don't think for any other reason than people just aren't trained on it and talked about it. I have a friend, Lewis, who he's in his 80s now, and he was a big believer in cancer insurance because he had cancer, and then he had a policy and he lapsed it, and he really could have used the money. And but it is something you can definitely sell. Another thing I like about final expense is that it is sold. This is really important. Not bought. Now think about this. Can you go to the store to buy life insurance? Do people even actively go after buying life insurance? People really don't. People really need a salesperson like you to confront, in a nice way, the prospect about the importance of having life insurance. What most people do is as they go through life, they think about life insurance, but they put it off. I got other things to worry about. I got other things to buy, other bills to pay for, right? But it takes a professional like you in person or over the phone to stop people where they are in their life to revisit this, to sell them on the reasons of why they need it. Not just why they need it, but need it today, right? And this concept, life insurance is sold, not bought. Burial insurance is sold, not bought. The point is that it needs a human interaction to make the sale. Why is that important? Because all we hear about today is how artificial intelligence or Amazon is going to gobble up and create a monopoly and knock out the human element of selling, right? But to this date, knock on wood, we haven't seen anything remotely like that in the final expense, really the life insurance arena. We've seen startups like Ethos. There's some other ones, some of you guys could probably mention them, that's designed to be this process that doesn't require an agent. They're trying to knock the agents out of the process. Personally, I don't think they've succeeded at all. You don't really hear about them. They haven't really gobbled up any serious market share. This business in 2024, how it sold, despite maybe the one difference over the phone, but how it sold is exactly the same since it was since 1974. And why is that important? Because there's a level of consistency despite the economics. Think about where it was in 74 to today. So much has changed in our world, but the process selling life insurance and burial insurance has not. And that is a good thing for the agent. And that's a good thing for you selling final expense, because seniors tend to want more personal service anyways. They don't want to deal with, you know, somebody from another country or somebody or a computer process to sell. They need help, they need guidance, and people appreciate that. And then the last thing here that I think is a benefit of final expense is that it is simple and redundant. Now, what do I mean by redundant? What you will do selling final expense, it's like working an assembly line over and over and over again. You pick up the phone, you talk to Mildred, you deal with objections, you sell her on why you should buy, and you close her, or you don't. But you repeat that process over and over and over again in person as well. It's simple, it's not complicated. But that's part of the thing that actually does make it a little bit complicated, is that it doesn't take a lot more than what I've just described to be successful at final expense. It just takes a commitment. And I think where the people who do really well in this business, the thing that they do is they don't allow the simple concept to get any more complicated. They just specifically stick to the system that is being taught to them. They don't try to play with it. They don't try to, you know, modify it in some weird, unproven way. They just follow the system. I failed out of the business 12 months in because I got away from the simplicity of the business. I got tired of showing up to leads' homes. I sold in person. They weren't there. They weren't interested. They're broke, right? All the things we have to deal with. I came up with a new lead, unproven, and for the money I spent, I didn't make nearly as much as if I had spent it on the tired old state-regulated life insurance leads that I use. If I just stuck, and this is the point, to the simple system that incidentally still works today, then I may not have failed, right? And that sometimes that will get people. So have a hobby outside of final expense. Just come in and do the business, rinse and repeat. Don't get creative with this business. It doesn't require it, which is a good thing, but it'll drive some people nuts at the same time. So these are the reasons I like final expense. Let me tell you a reason why you shouldn't do final expense. I'll give you a couple of reasons. If you don't want to put a lot of hours in and you're not willing to work hard, don't do this business. We stopped taking part-timers for the telesales and our free lead program because you have to be all in. And it's not that you can't make it work necessarily. The success rate's a lot lower with us. But with final expense, you've got to be all in. It's hard to do this product, selling multiple products at the same time at the rate that you need to be successful at it. So my opinion is, don't do this business if you're not going to put in a full-time effort. It's the odds of your success are that much lower. There's going to be lots of rejection. If you don't like rejection, don't do this business. People will tell you all sorts of crazy things over the phone and in person, and people are people. That's just how they are. It's not personal. But don't expect everybody to just willingly buy from you. You're going to have to put up a little bit of a fight. Because remember, in our business, what we call our clients are world-class procrastinators. Yeah, okay. Somebody heard that before. You know, they didn't get to 70 and not buy insurance for no reason, right? So you have to be a master at overcoming objections and instilling urgency to buy. And that's something that can be trained. You don't have to be a natural at it. You need to have somebody, a coach, an organization that's dedicated to that. But if you can do that and handle rejection, more the merrier. And lastly, if you don't have the discipline to stick to the simple process, if you like the more creative style of selling, like you like the IUL stuff, and I'm not bad-mouthing that at all. If you like the more creative stuff and you want to deal with a higher income clientele, final expense is not it. Final expense is grandma and grandpa. Simple people, salt of the earth types. They just want somebody they like and trust. Okay? They don't care about so much the companies as do you care about them? Because they will buy anything from you if you've made a great connection with them. They don't care about the carrier necessarily as much as do I trust the guy that or gal I'm talking to, right? So you have to have that willingness to be consistent and have that kind of discipline and be willing to work with that group of people in order to be successful. Any questions about final expense in general or anything about we talked so far today?
I think you should put number 13 if you're not a people person.
Yeah, be a people person for this business, right?
Like face to face anyway.
Yeah, telesales too. You have to like people to be in this business, or be at least curious about people, right? Like I'm always curious about the people that I deal with. Where are they from? Who they are? What their background is. I mean, you do this business long enough, you get some crazy stories. You see some crazy people, or at least hear about crazy people over the phone, right? It's fun, but you got to have that inclination. If you ain't a people person, I think everybody here is. I hope so. Questions? Anybody else? Let's go to the back here.
So I come from more of the telesales background on the health side,
Yeah.
the large South Florida call centers, and there's a thought that persistency buries a lot of the call centers on telesales final expense. I've heard stories. Maybe it's just it might even be untrue in today's world, but I was always told that the persistency usually sucks them under at about month number 6 to 9. As they keep growing. Have you found the persistency between face to face and telesales is now at parity?
No. So the question is about persistency. In my experience, persistency. It's funny. There's a couple of different ways you can go here, but I've never seen a true persistency issue that's so markedly different from face to face because it always comes down to how you sell it. My opinion is, as a final expense agent, whether you're running a call center or selling yourself over the phone, be a broker, have access to different products. That's going to help persistency and boost retention. There are call centers that are one product solutions, and they're going to have persistency and placement issues. Placement meaning, does the policy get approved and make it to the first payment, right? Persistency is, how many of the policies stay on for the first year? That's what we're talking about. Yeah. So bottom line, guys, I think it just comes down to training and skill set.